It's indeed my pleasure to be here, and having come to this conference for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. It's amazing the quality of the speakers, the quality of the topics, and I spent the day yesterday at the Kennedy School, and some of the discussions, et cetera, were fascinating. So it's really my deep pleasure to be helping moderate this session this morning with Keshav Murugesh. So without much ado, let me introduce him, and then we can take the conversation from there. The focus of today's discussion is really about the decade, if you will, and how the role that India can play in the decade in terms of developing it, and really building on the Dean's comments about the importance of economic growth in India, but at the same time, a really big focus on inclusive growth. Not just growth for the sake of growth, but inclusive growth given the diversity and the massive population that India has, and the role that it can actually play in changing some important societal issues. So with that, without much ado, let me introduce Keshav Murugesh. Are we going to? There we go. Okay, there we go. Welcome. So welcome, Keshav. We are here at the Klarman Hall at Harvard Business School. So to introduce Keshav is the group, and I'm going to read this because it's a seriously impressive resume. I don't want to mess it up. Is the group CEO of New York Stock, NYSE-listed WNS Holdings, a global leader in accelerating the transformation of global companies by leveraging people, process, and digital innovation. He is a past chairman of NASSCOM, and prior to that has served as chairperson of NASSCOM's BPM Council for 2 years. He's also chief mentor of Kalpataru Center of Entrepreneurship, established under the guidance of Software Technology Parks of India to promote innovation and entrepreneurship. He's an angel investor in tech-oriented startups and has spoken to the World Economic Forum, Harvard, like he is today, and many other universities. He has received a number of awards from the ICAI, CNBC, Economic Times, and Enactus, an organization he brought to India and chaired for 6 terms. Keshav loves all sports, and we'd love to talk to you about that, because I think that's really an important part of India, but is partial to cricket, surprise, surprise, and football. So anyway, without much ado, welcome, Keshav. Thank you so much for participating and for all of WNS's support in making this conference happen. So maybe I'll hand it over to you for some opening remarks on your perspective on India's role in the decade, India's role in digital transformation, and what you see broadly as the opportunities and challenges, and then we can take it from there. So over to you.
Thank you, Professor. And a really great morning to everyone over there. First of all, I must thank you for the opportunity to speak on a subject that infuses tremendous pride, optimism, and of course, hope, for me both as an Indian business leader and of course, a citizen of India. And why not? Your alma mater.
I'm sorry, Keshav, just 1 second. Just 1 second, there's some sort of an echo. Is there a way to fix this, or should we just carry on? And someone from the tech area can help us? Is it from the other side? Should we just carry on then, Diksha? What do you think? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Keshav, can you just try once again? Apologies for this. There's some technical issue here.
Okay. So I just want to once again say I must sincerely thank all of you for this opportunity to speak on this kind of subject that infuses so much of pride, optimism, and hope in me as a business leader as well as a citizen of India. And as we all know, is it clear now, Vikram?
Yeah, let's go. Yes, thank you. Perfect.
Okay. So Morgan Stanley actually predicts that India will be one of 3 economies in the world that will generate over $400 billion in annual economic output growth from 2023 onward. And this is going to rise to more than $500 billion after 2028. Now, with a 5.5% average GDP growth over the past decade, India has rightly, I would say, claimed the crown of being the fastest growing economy in the world today. India, I believe, is also on the track to become the world's third largest economy by 2027 and have the third largest stock market by 2030, following all its key investments in technology as well as energy. Now, this decade is without a doubt, as you put it, a decade with technology being our great accelerator. Specifically, if you look at 2022, it has been an absolute breakthrough year for the Indian technology industry, which now has emerged as an absolute technology hotbed. 30 to 32% of revenues came from the digital stream. The software products segment has also witnessed tremendous growth. It has now clocked $13.4 billion in 2022 and is expected to touch $30 to $40 billion by 2030. So what we were referring to a few years ago as technology potential from an India perspective has already made that big leap to technology impact, I would say. And the best part of this impact is that it has become central to life as well as business. It is solving real problems in the lives of people. Now, all of us who have used the digital stack know what I'm talking about, but I'll give you a few other examples. The Indian health tech startup, Blue Semi, which some of you may have heard of, has designed a very innovative and sleek healthcare product called IVA. And this is patented by, it's powered by patented technology that is leveraging today sensor fusion, artificial intelligence, as well as IoT. And IVA can now measure 6 vitals in 60 seconds with just a touch of the skin. Now, with amazing accuracy, it can also provide effective guidelines to bring down sugar levels as well as blood pressure. So imagine the impact it can have. In agriculture, an AI-based chatbot now developed by Digital Green, as well as Colored Cow, provides farmers with customized notifications and short videos on a real-time basis. Now, this is helping farmers to plan and manage crops much more efficiently. So I would say that today technology is also quite social and fun as well. You probably are aware that India's first blockchain wedding happened in November 2021, when a Pune-based couple's marriage was made official with an Ethereum smart contract. So India is, certainly shaping and leading this decade, for the world. And I must say it was really a proud moment when our Honorable Union Finance Minister was speaking at an event recently at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. She offered the service of the India Stack, which is our open source network for digital public goods, as well as APIs to other countries that need such expertise. Now, India's indigenously developed and full-fledged 5G infrastructure is also ready for sharing with other nations. It includes core as well as radio network components. And according to the Indian DOT, they could be commercially available as soon as March 23. That's next month. This can propel India to an elite club of telecom network technology players from the US, Sweden, Finland, South Korea, as well as China. You look at what's happening with the G20, and that is a strategic, political, and economic bloc representing 2/3 of the world's population. Now, taking on this G20 presidency by India is not only a milestone moment in the course of Indian diplomacy, but also a great opportunity to lead this decade with an effective intersection of technology and diplomacy. So cloud, cybersecurity, AI, IoT, blockchain, and more have actually opened up amazing opportunities to build ecosystems that will now accelerate access as well as affordability. Finally, I must also say that India can be really proud of the way it has made use of ESG along with digital, the core of transformation of the country. Having pledged to reach net zero now by 2070, the country has made ESG an absolute focal point of boardroom discussions, and organizations across industries are strengthening their ESG skills and capabilities. Startups will continue to be India's soft power in our decade journey. As the third largest startup hub in the world, with more than 25,000 tech startups, India will enable inclusion of technologies and create solutions for global impact. Among the latest successes is that of an Indian startup called Skyroot Aerospace, which launched the first privately built rocket into space in November 22. And India is also emerging as a global hub for digital talent with more than 5 million in the tech workforce and many more in other sectors. Now, this makes India the second largest hub for digital talent, with 1 out of 3 employees already digitally skilled. The digital tech startup talent pool is now 1.6 million, growing at a CAGR of 25%. And with over 36% of women employees, the Indian IT industry is one of the largest private sector employers of women, with over 1.8 million women in the workforce out of the 5 million. Now, India has quietly shown the world the power of inclusive technology to drive a human-centric decade, as we call it. And as we journey into this momentous decade, we are sure to witness how the combined forces of Indian digital innovation, startup ecosystems, and engineering and R&D will transform lives and businesses across the globe. So that's where I'll end my little talk and look forward to discussions.
Thank you, Keshav. Thank you so much for kind of laying that out for us. It's so actually heartening to hear and consistent, given that we are sitting at HBS, and we just heard from Dean Datta that 2 of his key of the school's initiatives under his leadership are around acceleration of digitization, which is what you touched on, and the role of business in global society, which a large part of that is how do we incorporate ESG, climate, and other important societal issues into how business operates. So I'd like to really actually build on those 2 themes, since it's consistent with the mission of the school here, as well as what you articulated, and very important for India. So let's talk about the digitization piece first. What are the opportunities you see for India to not just build businesses in India, but businesses for the world? Like, is this an opportunity where traditionally India's been done stuff or big local market, et cetera, but what are the opportunities you see for some of our audience members as to building businesses maybe based in India, but for global, like WNS does, for example?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and something that I think all of us are trying very hard to do. As you know, that over the years, we have traditionally powered global corporations in terms of enabling technology for them. And while we built a $227 billion business, of which almost 75 are export or 80% is export oriented, a lot of it was essentially around exporting our talent and then the value add getting delivered in a different country. And I think the challenge that the government and this prime minister has thrown at the CEO community over the past few years is how can you create a similar kind of ecosystem, similar kind of an opportunity for India, for the world as well. So first and foremost, I think that if you look at essentially the building blocks, I think India has invested in and created all the right investments and practices and built momentum in terms of some of the things that will, which will enable this. The first and foremost is the fact that, we have this outstanding talent which is available, for us to leverage. That is one. The second is, as we all know, our mathematical and English prowess that we are all, so proud of. So that continues to be, extremely strong. But at the same time, I think what India has done extremely well over the past few years, and which comes from companies working closely with the government as well as industry bodies like NASSCOM and a few others, which is constantly upskilling, retraining, reskilling talent such that people who are locked in lower level kind of tech roles are consistently being retrained and moving towards higher technology areas. At the same time, if you look at the investments India has been making in terms of the new technology areas, let's face it, there is a deficit of talent in all of these areas across the globe. And if there's one country which can provide this talent and also do some value addition, it's going to be India. So if you look at the kind of effort that India has made in terms of upskilling, reskilling, and creating this new talent base, it's, I think, one of the most exciting opportunities for the future. If you look at the technologies itself, I think the big opportunity is going to be around artificial intelligence and intelligent automation, and how some of these areas will power businesses of the future as well. At the same time, there's also a lot of discussion around things like metaverse. And I think that's another area where I think India will take the lead through its, its talent base. So if you look at it, I think the potential for India to take the lead in interlinking a more expansive, kind of digital universe is there. AR hardware and software will become an integral part of this world. So I think India has an opportunity there. Blockchain is going to take off at some stage, and again, India has a potential because we are creating the practices behind. NFTs will securely transfer digital assets from one party to the other. Again, India has the potential to invest and create leadership there. And we can go on with decentralized finance, metaverse-based banks, and many other things. But if you look at the most interesting thing India has done in the past decade, Vikram, is we have created 3,000 deep tech startups, right? And I think these startups, which are in various stages of development at this point in time, have the potential to completely transform the way the world looks at India long term. So from my perspective, I think I'm a big bull in terms of how India will transform the world. But I think the potential of all of this, as well as India leveraging some of the things that it did in the digital stack and taking that across the world. Very simple thing, utilities like DigiLocker, utilities like Arogya Setu, the UDI program, all of these actually have potential to be taken to other countries and build a monetization engine on top. And I think the government is starting to do that. So interesting days ahead.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so that's India's role potentially. And then maybe coming back to your other comments, which is about the role of digitization technology in inclusive development. So to throw a couple of thoughts out there and get your reaction to it. One is, while India's obviously made significant progress in dealing with poverty, it's still by far the poorest country in the world, number one. Two is, if I look at any data and stats out there, basically the number of jobs that need to be created in India, say roughly about 10 million a year, are more than, 10 billion a year, are more than, the next 10 countries combined, right? Second. Third is, while India's talked about a lot in terms of its progress in technology, and you highlighted the reskilling as well as, the number of people hired in the tech industry, again, based on the data I've seen, that all the jobs combined that the tech industry is probably, about 20 billion or so totally. So in a country that's got 1.4 billion and growing with massive poverty issues, and huge job creation, what role should technology and can technology play in solving that fundamental societal problem?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I think it's a question that every politician across the world is trying to, address. Let me give you my, my response to what I think is the, art of the possible here. So I think the first thing that must happen from an India perspective is already happening, as we can see. The first thing is, in order to create jobs, there has to be a massive spend or growth taking place in terms of just infrastructure outlays. And if you just each time you visit India, I'm sure you're seeing the kind of work that is being done in terms of creating new airports, new railway stations, new roads, new highways, new ports. I think that's the first thing that needs to get done in terms of creating economic uplift and some element of job creation for people who may not have the technology skills to participate in the technology side of the business. I think that's the first thing that's happening. And just this morning, I saw that the Prime Minister of India had inaugurated the new Mumbai New Delhi kind of expressway. And I think you can just imagine what kind of effort must have gone into creating that particular road, as well as the other, kind of infrastructure that is being created across the length and breadth of India. And I think that is the first initiative that needs to be done, if you ask me, to create this. The second, I think, will have to be around our, understanding our roles as business people, and and creating businesses, with a soul, I would say. So the first thing is, to recognize the fact that, one of the reasons people come to India from a technology point of view also is the fact that, while we can enable digital transformation at scale for other countries, over a period of time, as the systems and processes settle down in India and some of these things get accepted in India, we can do the same in India as well. So I think the ability for us to really, be seen as companies with a soul, to create employment, to take on board the fact that the reason we run companies is also to feed people, and while also creating, all the wonderful things of, top line growth, profitability, cash flow, and things like that, is a very important requirement, I think, for CEOs based out of India, driving, some of these initiatives. And I think the potential for driving inclusive growth is, really working closely with the government and coming up with new programs that will enable infrastructure outreach, across the, length and breadth of the country, enable new programs around healthcare to be taken across the length and breadth of the country, because you can see that there are many areas that are disconnected, from a healthcare point of view, and there is potential leveraging technology and strong domain for private sector players to come in and create that. And I think the government is going out of its way to create that enabling infrastructure to, allow some of this. At the same time, if you look at the way India is positioning fiber across the length and breadth of the country, the ability for, small businesses to be created in the smallest of villages, smallest of towns, to really sort out day-to-day issues that, people have, and then creating some kind of a revenue model around it is very much there. So I would say that, it's a journey that has to be, undertaken. But I think the potential for us to do that and slowly but surely increase the per capita income of the country is very much there.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the per capita income has grown, and again, based on all the data out there, that it's at about $2,300 to $2,400 per GDP per capita, which is, if you look at historically for most countries, is really a takeoff inflection point, which is, I guess, what drives Jeff Bezos and others talking about India being the kind of India's century or decade, or however, whatever the time frame is.
Absolutely.
You talked about a very interesting thing about the soul of a company. We talk about the soul of a corporation, the purpose of a corporation a lot here at HBS. So what is the soul of WNS? And how are you thinking about what you as an organization are doing for all the things that you identified just now in your last comment?
Yeah, thanks, Vikram, for that question. So first and foremost, I'll say that, being the CEO of a publicly listed company, I think it is critical for my team and I to deliver the outcomes that are expected by, all our stakeholders. First of all, definitely our investors. So everyone is looking for, that revenue, growth. So from our point of view, our focus is leading the industry in terms of revenues, in terms of profitability, in terms of cash flow, as well as in terms of, just building that leadership quotient inside the company. And I think as a company, we have done that extremely well, over the past number of years. And I think one of the things that we like, as a company to focus on is to enable every other stakeholder involved with the company also to benefit, while our journey is making that progress. Now, when I use that term, a company with a soul, I sincerely believe in it because, you look at it in this day and age, where technology is being seen as the great enabler across the world, right? We are also having this other issue of the technology companies today making announcements of huge numbers of job losses. On the one hand, the U.S. markets continue to do well. You're seeing that, the hiring, cycle continues to be, very strong. But at the same time, the enigma here is that some of the largest technology companies with billions of dollars on their balance sheet have actually announced job losses. And that has created a lot of discomfort, disharmony, as well as, I would say, uneasiness in the minds of employees, as well as potential employees of tech companies in India. And I can tell you, that's the one thing that I'll be extremely focused on as a company. My leadership team is very focused on this, that we will grow, but not at all costs. When the pandemic broke out, when, clients were not able to predict volumes to us, and we lost volumes dramatically, Vikram, one of the decisions we made as a leadership team was to say that we will ensure that every one of our people working across the globe are taken care of, are paid salaries, even if all of us as a leadership team, as well as everyone else had to make sacrifices. So we made some significant sacrifices across the whole company, but we made sure that not a single person lost their job. Every morning when I go to work, I see myself as a CEO of a company that needs to feed 200,000 people. That's my 60,000 employees multiplied by 4 members per family. And as long as we keep that in mind, I think the ability for us to actually create or navigate a path which allows you to deliver the outcomes that investors need, but at the same time also get you the respect from investors as a company that goes well beyond is very much there. And I can tell you, if you look at what WNS Cares Foundation does, one of the reasons we created it was because we said that as the company makes progress, as the company grows, we operate from 13 or 14 countries, 60, 70, delivery centers. We said we want to make sure that everyone outside of the company, looking at us should also feel that they're part of our growth story. And that is exactly what WNS Cares Foundation has achieved. It creates real life education programs for communities around our campuses. And, I would say, therefore, every time we grow, we think it's because of, obviously great execution, but also because of the blessings we receive from all of these people. And I think it's very important for leadership teams to think in this way, particularly in a day and age where technology is threatening to eat someone's lunch.
Sounds like, based on what you just said, that WNS would make a very interesting case study for some of the courses out here. We actually teach a course, as was mentioned, and I'm one of the faculty members that does this, on leadership and corporate accountability. And the key aspect of that really is how do you balance the responsibility of companies such as WNS to your shareholders versus your employees, not versus, but how do you balance between shareholders, employees, customers, and the kind of communities that you operate in.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of very interesting you say that, and the challenges, which I'm sure you have, balancing those two,
Yes.
all those four. In terms of, this is a student conference. In terms of advice for students, given that, like you just said, that we're going through some very interesting times in the world, what advice would you give students as they kind of graduate here in the next year or so, or some of the more younger professionals here, in terms of how they should be viewing their career and what they can be doing to kind of, as we say here, be leaders that can make a difference in the world?
Yeah, Vikram. So, that's again an excellent question. And I'm pretty certain you and I, when we meet offline, we can have long discussions on this one aspect. But I would say that, just adapting through lifelong kind of learning would be the core message that I would want to give, any student. I mean, look at me. I'm a chartered accountant like you, but I run a tech company, right? So the reality is, I think all of us have to constantly keep learning new skills, new technologies, new ways of working, and new kinds of jobs, and sometimes, even going to new careers, so you got to keep that hunger in the pit of your stomach, and you have to keep, recreating yourself, I would say. And in terms of a model, I use a framework, Vikram. I call it the start, stop, and the accelerate, kind of framework. And it, for a young student, quite often it is, what should I start doing? What should I stop doing? And, what is it that I should accelerate in terms of, my knowledge, my skills, whatever. And so I would say in terms of starting, the first thing I would say is, I think it's important that everyone has an effective, game plan for skills as well as capability development. So I would say you should keep multi-skilling yourselves and pick 2 or 3 skills for not just in time proficiency, but more for just in case versatility. So just be versatile about all of this. You must start developing out of the box thinking, I would say. In terms of what one must stop, I would say, stop waiting for that green light in order to plan for your future. Just imagine yourself in a new, future, and just keep, going with that. So, don't think there's going to be a green light when you will, move ahead. So stop thinking of it in that way. And then the other thing is, stop thinking that only technical skills are more important than behavioral skills. For quite a while, we have spoken about STEM skills, and now we're speaking about STEAM skills. But the reality of life is, when you look back, there are tens of thousands of engineers who have been laid off recently. But I'm pretty certain that people who had that basic degree, but also had a very strong capability to communicate, taking initiative, solving problems, and things like that. I think that is what companies really want in people. So I would say that's an area to really focus on. And in terms of accelerating, it should be the agility to constantly reflect, reboot, and oneself, because you have to keep destroying what you had in the past and creating a new personality of yourself. So learning pace and curiosity must keep on increasing in terms of length and breadth, I would say, in terms of understanding new markets, new practices, new things that are happening around. And the most important thing a young person should tell themselves is that they are unique, have great belief in themselves. And we've all been through this, Vikram, many times. We've seen business cycles go up and down, but I think the people who I think followed some of these practices probably got ahead, is what I think. I mean, I got ahead by doing this.
That's fantastic. That's great advice. And I'm going to come back to, at the end here, on Keshav the person. But before that, maybe we have a few questions from the group or the audience, if you all would like to ask.
Sure.
David Wilcox, Reach Scale. So we heard from the Dean mentioning kind of areas where people are focused on creating new ideas, technology. You mentioned design thinking. You've talked a lot about technology and the role it can play.
Can you use the mic, please?
I can, if I have one. You've talked about the role technology can play. My question would be, because if you rank the top 10 design thinkers in the world, I expect India might have 1, 2 people on that list. If you rank the top 10 technology thinkers in the world, maybe 2, 3. What is the thing that India uniquely has as an area of expertise that the rest of the world doesn't have, that could actually, and I would suggest that India is about to demonstrate this capability. If they reach any of their goals, any of the 500 gigawatt goals, any of the other goals, they're going to have to do something that they're better at than anybody in the world. And they're now going to have to do it 10x anything they've ever done before.
Right. So Keshav, what is India? What is unique about India? What is the differentiating key unique factor?
I think the most important differentiating factor of India is its talent. Its talent in technology, its talent in the in the life sciences, liberal arts, and the fact that India has now woken up to the potential that it has. Right now, in some of the areas that you spoke about, you must expect that each country will have its own, its own ability to do certain things. And I think from an India point of view, the fact that it has this kind of a talent, 1.4 billion people, it has this huge number of people coming out, with graduation degrees every year. It has, this huge success, available already from a technology point of view, and its new hunger to start looking at creating deep tech assets and creating, new businesses as well as new startup, thinking is, I think, the biggest, potential for India. So you'll have to sit and watch the space, because it is that talent base and that hunger in the people that has now been awakened and soon will be unleashed.
Yeah, it's the demographic dividend as to whether it's channeled in the positive way, as you say, or potentially can be a source of concern, right? So I think that's where, yes, you had a question.
Hi, I'm Ayush, a first-year student at Harvard Business School. I wanted to touch more on the discussion we were having on technology's role to solving problems like poverty. I come from the state of Bihar, which we all know has very high poverty rates, and I wanted to touch on, can technology or startups build sustainable, profitable businesses to solve some of these issues of such states, especially when the income of a household is, say, a monthly income of less than 10 to 12,000 a month?
Yeah, so Ayush, first of all, congratulations, for being at Harvard, Business School. That's really a fantastic achievement. And now to ask this question to try and alleviate the problems of the state of Bihar is an amazing thing. First thing I'll say is that, poverty can be alleviated and can be dealt with not with just, one facet of technology alone, but actually all of us coming together and doing many things. Right? Technology is one aspect of all of it, and technology can definitely help in terms of at least creating, new jobs for people who at least have the basic skills to perform. So if you look at it, you look at some of the, the areas that companies like us have created our delivery centers in. They are in the tier 2, tier 3 locations where we're looking to actually bring in people with a very basic educational degree to actually help some of the leading brands across the world in terms of their digital transformation. But if you look at what you asked for, I think it comes from many other things. It comes from the basics of education itself, which frankly speaking, is also the responsibility of the government. We elect, people to government because we want them also to do, some things. So I think I would say education is critical, not just providing it, but actually people going and, getting that education. That's one. The second is, having that hunger to want to do something and alleviate, poverty or getting out of that, poverty situation. And then thereafter, building these kind of skills that I spoke about earlier are some of the ways of, doing this. And I think, as the economy grows, every state of India is going to benefit because, ultimately it is going to be around public spend in, many of these areas that we already spoke about earlier, building roads, airports, ports, this, that, and the other, healthcare facilities. And in all of these areas, if you think of it, technology will play a role. I mean, what is stopping, a bunch of people coming together and creating a technology solution that will, enable primary healthcare to every, villager in the state of Bihar, say, And I'm sure the government will enable a monetization model around it. So the government already has digital kind of assets available, but there is a lot of grunt work involved thereafter, right, to actually take that and deliver it. But there is a potential for monetizing that. If you look at fiber that is now going into every gram panchayat stage today, the ability for the telcos to come in with maybe smart people like you or people that to actually leverage that fiber that has gone to the gram panchayat and create a new business process center or a customer service center, in your village or in some small village, to work with companies like WNS and therefore create jobs and things like that. It's eminently possible. So I would say that these are the ways that things can get done. The most important thing I can tell you is that the opportunity to start delivering on some of this is very high today. Right? It's going to be very difficult to do some of this stuff, but the opportunity to do it in India is very high, and people who have the willpower, who have the guts, and a little bit of funding, which is always possible for a good initiative, can get it done.
All right. Sorry, we are running a little bit over time here, but maybe take one more question and then we'll conclude.
Yeah, thank you. We are talking of clean energy all the time, and recently there was a news that China is thinking of not really giving out the polysilicon technology and the wafers which are required for any kind of clean energy. Now, in that given scenario, if India is to go really solar from renewable energy, then we will have to make our own polysilicon ingot, which means quality power, which currently is actually difficult in India. Would you feel that the solution could be slightly very revolutionary? Maybe you put up some large, reliable power, fossil fuel-based power plants, and then put a polysilicon and gradually you phase out. So we'll do some harm, but eventually we will be able to take care of, have our own solar manufacturing complexes.
Yeah, great question. Sounds like a very smart question. I can tell you I'm no expert on, solar power, but all I can tell you is when you talk to the government in India, when you talk to any state chief minister, one of the biggest areas of focus and potential spend is the whole, clean energy and solar area, right? I'm pretty certain that India will figure it out, and I'm pretty certain that as far as this area is concerned, India is looking at actually creating solutions without China.
Yeah. So with that, let's conclude by getting to know Keshav the person in 1 minute, which is obviously very hard to do, but we'll try. We'll give it our best shot. Ultimately, we can talk about companies and what they do and all that. It's all driven by leadership, and so we'd love to learn about Keshav the person. So what fires you up every day, Keshav?
Well, in our business,
short, brief answers, rapid fire questions.
In my business, it's just learning something new in the tech field.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? All my employees quitting to set up a startup.
What's your favorite IPL team?
IPL, Chennai.
Ooh.
Not a surprise, huh?
What is the one exciting skill of the future?
Exciting skill of the future will be Jugaad.
There you go. I love it. What is one of your biggest regrets?
Well, not playing cricket for the country.
And lastly, mile long, inch deep, or inch long, mile deep? Which one are you?
Great question. I like to be mile long, mile deep. I think
Lovely. With that, thank you so much, Keshav, for being with us. You've been extremely wonderful. You've done an absolute fabulous job for helping us set the day on both digitization, on India's growth, and your personal story. So thank you very much for being with us, and enjoy the rest of your evening in India.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.